The Chargers, last Thursday, 63-21 trashing at the hands of the hated rival, the Raiders. It was the worst Charger game I have ever seen in modern time. And all the years I was the voice of the Chargers and the Seattle Seahawks, I never broadcast a game that was so bad. When it was 42-0 at halftime, you and I looked at each other and nearly dropped our beer on the carpet. The end result, I wrote a scathing one man's opinion column on Thursday night that appeared Friday morning. Your letter of resignation is expected on my desk by 9 a.m. By 9:30 a.m. on Friday, the Chargers had fired their coach, had fired their general manager. And I hate to pile on, but I did it Saturday morning on KUSI on my Saturday sports report. I intentionally took a 15-yard penalty for targeting the Chargers. The first family of football. That's what they call themselves. The brass of those people to take the franchise from San Diego, move it to LA, and brand themselves as the first family of football. The first family of football is in last place in the AFC West. The players quit on Brandon Staley. It's obvious to me, Brandon Staley is so overwhelmed with the job, they reach the end of the road with him. He exit totally defiant of the opinion, I believe in my system, I believe in my players. Well, you're 24-25, and you got one of the great young quarterbacks in the league in Justin Herbert, and you can't make the playoffs, and your players quit on the field in the first half. I've never seen anything as disgraceful as that. And I like Brandon Staley. I think he's a bright light, but he was defiant. He was inflexible. I've been told from within that the packages that they were trying to run with the defense caused terrible mental overload. And that's why the Chargers defense, notably the back seven linebackers and secondary, always seem to be a step slow or never ever getting there, blowing communication, guys running open. And they got sucker punched. I mean, you look at what the Raiders did. The Raiders scored on 2 wide receiver option plays, and the Raiders receivers were open from here to the back parking lot. Chargers blew the coverage. They got beat on a wildcat formation run by a running back who had not carried the ball all year, and he went 35 yards along the way. And then as the game progressed, it just got worse and worse. So Brandon Staley's gone. Tom Telesco, the general manager, who built this roster, a lot of athletes, better breed of athletes than they've ever had, has drafted well. He's found a few quality free agents. He pays the price, too. He's fired. I felt bad for both those guys because I was able to communicate with them, and they responded very well to questions I asked. May not have always agreed with what I wrote on my website, my one man's opinion column. But you go back and you look, Staley's first year, offensive line wiped out by injuries. Staley's second year, virtually all the defensive stars, major significant injuries, missed chunks of the season. Year 3, Justin Herbert plays with a fractured left finger, then fractures his right hand, index finger at the end of the season. Nothing was ever the way it had been planned to be because they couldn't keep their players on the field. And now we find out from what I've been told, the playbook was so complicated, there was just mental overload for a lot of the young players defensively. So it's really ugly. And I will tell you, the media guys that I text back and forth with, to a man, everyone hoped the Raiders would put 70 on the Chargers in that game last Thursday night. Oh, not too much hate, even though it's the Christmas season. Lump of coal to Dean Spanos. So they got a massive problem. And the Raiders did not play like that at all. The week prior, the Raiders lost a 3-0 game. And their offense was incompetent virtually all season, and they just killed the Bolts. And at the end of the game, Antonio Pierce was asked walking off the field by the NFL Network people, what'd you tell your guys who were up 42-0 at halftime? He said, I told them to keep their foot on the pedal against those guys. Yeah. Those guys, the Chargers. They're hated rivals, the Chargers. They wanted to run up a score on the Chargers, and they essentially they did. And then there was NFL video showing the Chargers owner's booth. And there's Spanos standing in the shadows trying to stay out of the limelight. Hey, own it. You created this mess. And there was John Spanos, the president of football operations. Thanks, Dad, for the job. He didn't want to look into the cameras either. And the worst part of this, or maybe it's the best part of this, depending how you care about the Chargers, the worst and best of this was on national TV. The whole bleeping nation saw the incompetence of Charger football. And I would have to say there was a lot of cheering in San Diego. So I felt bad about what happened to two guys that I liked. But, John, the scoreboard does not lie. And this thing has been on a downhill slope. And, now we've got, obviously, what they're portraying as the excitement of hiring a new coach and general manager. And my response to that is, do you think we can trust the first family of football to hire the right coach and right general manager when you consider the last three head coaches that they've hired, and when you consider their history, that they fired a Hall of Fame coach in Don Coryell, fired their Super Bowl coach Bobby Ross, fired Marty Schottenheimer after 14-2 season? Charger fan, are you going to trust the first family of football to get it right this time with their track record? And by the way, their track record, out-of-town scoreboard, 313 wins, 341 losses.
Oof. So brutal.
Topics on the table, John. Pick anything and everything.
There are so many angles to this. I mean, well, first of all, as you know, as a professional journalist, former play-by-play of the Chargers, I mean,
and loudmouth talk show
host. I mean, you're covering this, giving it the professionalism it deserves. But on the other hand, I'm a former season ticket holder of the Chargers, and I had it up to here with these guys. And when they moved to LA, I kind of bailed on the NFL for a few years. And now it's just pure comedy. It's so entertaining to see this team continually screw it up. Now, I heard one person comment that Telesco, while he is the GM, he's really only kind of a super scout. Like that, really, John Spanos is the guy that makes the decisions on the roster in the draft. I mean, what's your take on that?
Why does John Spanos still have his job if he was a decision maker with Telesco? Mm-hmm. Hey, they were joined at the hip. They worked together for 11 plus years. If one guy goes, shouldn't the other guy go? Oh, no, we can't. Nepotism. Yes. There's nothing wrong with nepotism if you're on the receiving end of it.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, what a disaster of the whole situation too. And against the Raiders. I mean, of all teams, and then the Raiders scored 0 points the week before, but it was just insane what happened in that game. I mean, it's still mind boggling. Now, going back to Staley, it's interesting that, he's this defensive guru and he's got this magic defensive scheme, but it is complicated. And, that's one of the sins of coaches is if they make it too hard. And if the players have to think more than just react.
Smart guy, too smart.
Yeah.
Playbook this thick. Aren't enough hours in the day to be able to execute everything in that playbook.
Exactly.
It's really tough. I would assume he will go back to the Rams in some type of assistance job under Sean McVay and maybe rebuild credibility. Telesco will probably get hired somewhere else, not as a general manager, but probably as a player personnel guy or a director of scouting. I said at the start of the season, because you had the brass to ask me about being the former voice of the Chargers and being so outspoken about how this ended and what they did to 55 years of loyalty. And I remember the comment. I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan. I hope he goes 17-0. But in terms of Dean Spanos, he went 0-17. Well, they're not 0-17, but this is pretty bleeping close to being as bad as being 0-17 in the vision of the fans and the community. And now Charger football in LA, it does look irrelevant again.
And you mentioned the records of the team of Telesco and of Staley. Staley's only one game under 500, but that doesn't tell the story.
No.
I mean, blowing that game in Jacksonville in the playoffs last year.
27-0 lead, and they lost.
And then the 42-0, trailing at the halftime against the Raiders. It's insane how this franchise over and over makes terrible decisions. And to your point, getting rid of Ross and Coryell and Schottenheimer. I mean, come on, man. What are these guys doing?
What page of the dictionary is the word chargering in?
Yeah. I think that might be the word of the year in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Yeah.
Okay, well, if you're an NFL fan, if you're a Charger fan, if you're a Charger hater, hey, jump in the chat box and get in line so you can ask us, make some statements, ask some questions, your feel about Charger football right now.